In 2023, a misfiled crate in the National Archives was opened by mistake. Inside was a folder labeled Echo Chamber, a project scrubbed from every official record of the Cold War. It wasn't a weapons program or a space race initiative. It was an exploration into the sound of the human soul. What the researchers found wasn't divinity, it was a frequency that should never have been tuned in. 1978. The Department of Defense authorized a psychological warfare experiment designed to create the unbreakable soldier. The premise was simple. If the human mind could be isolated from all external stimuli and replaced with a specific harmonic resonance, could we program total obedience? They called it Project Echo Chamber. Led by Dr. Eris Thorne, a neurosurgeon with a history of unethical cognitive research, the project aimed to map the back door of the human consciousness. They believed that by silencing the world, they could hear the voice of the subconscious and command it. The location was sub-level 4 of the Nellis Range in Nevada, a brutalist concrete tomb buried 300 feet below the desert floor. The facility was an acoustic nightmare, perfectly silent, lined with lead and sound-dampening foam. There were no windows, no clocks, and no natural light. The only thing that moved in the air was the subtle hum of the ventilation system and the constant, rhythmic vibration of the experiment's core, the resonator. 12 volunteers were chosen, all decorated soldiers with high psychological resilience scores. They were told they were testing advanced communication gear. On September 12, 1978, the first subjects were placed in isolation tanks. They wore blackout goggles and noise-canceling headsets. For 16 hours a day, they were fed the frequency, a low-decibel infrasound loop designed to induce a state of hypersuggestibility. At first, the results were promising. Subject 4 reported an incredible sense of clarity. Subject 9 claimed he could see the math of the universe. But the clarity didn't last. By October, the logs began to change. The subjects were no longer just hearing the frequency, they were communicating with it. Dr. Thorne's notes describe a phenomenon he called auditory bleed. Subjects reported hearing voices, not within the headphones, but coming from the walls, the floor, and their own skin. They described the sound as the grinding of teeth or someone screaming in a language made of static. One subject was found clawing at his ears in his sleep, screaming that the silence was too loud. The researchers noticed something even more disturbing. The pulse of the frequency was beginning to sync with the electrical grid of the entire facility. The violence began on November 4th. Subject 7, during a routine cognitive test, lunged at a technician and attempted to bite off his own tongue. He claimed the technician's face was vibrating out of existence. Within a week, mass paranoia gripped the test wing. The soldiers began to believe the researchers were static people, hollow shells replaced by the frequency. They stopped eating, claiming the food sounded wrong. The cameras captured them standing in the corners of their cells, staring at the ceiling for hours, whispering in unison to a rhythm only they could hear. December 19th, 1978. 03 hours. The resonator malfunctioned, or perhaps it reached its intended potential. For 30 seconds, a high-pitched blast of 140 decibels ripped through sublevel 4. In the control room, monitors showed the subject's brainwaves flatlining, then spiking to impossible levels of activity. The cell doors, controlled by the primary computer, all slid open simultaneously. What followed was not a riot, but a harvest. The subjects didn't try to escape. They hunted the staff with a calculated, silent precision. When the security teams arrived, they found the lights flickering in red emergency mode. The silence was back, but the walls were painted with the aftermath of what the survivors called the Great Tuning. The facility was flooded with neurotoxin gas within the hour. Every surviving subject and researcher was expunged. The military didn't just close the project, they erased the facility. 3,000 tons of concrete were pumped into the elevator shafts. The blueprints were burned. The families of the volunteers were told their sons died in a training exercise over the Pacific. For 40 years, Echo Chamber remained a ghost story within the intelligence community, a warning about the dangers of looking too closely at the gaps in human perception. One nurse, Sarah Miller, managed to escape the cleanup, Before her death in 2005, she gave a recorded interview. She spoke of seeing Subject 4 in his final moments. He wasn't bleeding, he was vibrating. His skin looked like liquid, mirroring the static on the wall monitors. They didn't break, she whispered on the tape. They changed. They found the other side of the sound. Today, hikers near the Nevada site still report strange humming coming from the ground. Some say if you sit in the desert silence long enough, you start to hear it too. Modern science tells us that sound is just a vibration of air. But Project Echo Chamber suggests something much darker. That beneath the silence, there is a frequency that connects us all. And if we listen too closely, we might just invite something back through the static. Some secrets are buried for a reason, because once you hear it, you can never unhear it.